Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to True Crime with the Sarge. I'm your host, Joseph Jackalone, and we have Josh Zeman with us tonight, the Killing Season producer and writer. Josh, good to see you again, my friend. How are you?
Very good, Joe. How are you?
Good. Long Island is keeping us busy, man. So, I mean, jeez. Just when
It
you,
is.
it's like the old Godfather thing. Just when you thought you were out, they pull you back in. I
Well,
mean, big
it
news
doesn't feel
cycles.
like we're going to be out for a long time, Joe.
No, it doesn't, especially since if we're going to catch everybody up today on the presser that happened. I mean, when you read into it, the district attorney Ray Tierney said they had picked out 300 cases that they thought that they could use this new technology on. 300. And he didn't say it in so many words, but they said, they examined these cases, and what he's looking for, or what they were looking for, was solvability factors. And I think this number one solvability factor, of course, just about in every cold case investigation, is DNA, which we're going to get into
Right.
today.
So does that mean that they are looking for DNA that isn't as degraded as others because it's still easier for the lesser degraded, the less degraded DNA for Othram?
Yeah, what I think what they're going to do is, just from what kind of reading between the lines with the district attorney, said they're going to look for the best of the worst,
Right.
samples that they have. Basically, that's what they're going to do, because eventually, I think they'll be able to catch up even on those bad samples and how to do it. I mean, when you look at today's presser, and they're talking about the DNA that they got from the victim, Ann Lustig, there was a mixture that they couldn't even do in 2000. Right?
Right.
The capability that, so he says, the capability that Suffolk County Lab got didn't have this ability until 2019. So, I mean, the amazing amount of work that was put involved in this in a short period of time.
But it's not Othram. This is Suffolk
No,
County.
this is Suffolk County's lab, yeah, and yeah, he made a point of that. They weren't able to be able to separate these mixtures. It was 94% Ann Lustig and 6% other male. That
Oof.
was the breakdown, and then he actually gave the numbers that excluding anybody else. So the suspect, his name is Stephen, I think it's Breaky,
Breaky.
and yeah, Breaky, but this guy was a bad dude, man.
And bad and weird bad. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, well, Ann Lustig, who they named 69, was 69 years old.
yep.
She's picked up. Sinead, thank you very much for gifting those memberships. Sinead has been on top of us, Josh, for
I know.
being bad promoters, self
I
promoters.
know. I
So
know. Thank you, Sinead.
Sinead is kicking our butts behind the scenes, folks.
So does Sinead get to be the sergeant or the lieutenant?
She could be the chief as is right now, because she's been ordering me around for the last week.
Okay.
So, and there's Forrest Nelson, been a member for 17 months. Thank you very much, Forrest. Appreciate that. The the issue that really comes down to now is, how far are they going to be looking into this guy's background? So let's just lay it out for everybody.
Yep.
So Ann Lustig, this case was from 1997. It's 29 years old. The victim is 69 years old. She's at the Kings Park Psychiatric Center. She goes to the bus stop, getting a ride home, or the taxi stand, whatever it may be, and that's it. She disappears. She's later found the next day. So this was February 18th, 1997. She's found the next day, and she had been sexually assaulted and murdered. She hit with a blunt object, and she actually had neck compressions too, they said, according to what the district attorney had said on this. So it's interesting, because the year before that, there was a sexual assault coming from the same place, from this time an 82-year-old woman. So, I mean,
which by the way is, as you know, that kind of expands and makes it a very strange, because usually rapes of older women are done by younger perpetrators.
younger people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, he's not that old at the time, right? So he's only, I mean, he died, the suspect's dead. I think he was only 58 years old when he died.
Oh,
so he
right.
was pretty young.
So he's just figuring out his MO.
You're right. So he actually flees Long Island, and he goes down to Florida, and he gets arrested for an assault against an 8-year-old or something like that, man. So a total opposite of what he was doing up here. Now, listen, I think Mary Murphy had asked the district attorney about any other potential companion cases. I mean, I just can't imagine that this guy, these are the only 2 cases that he did.
Well, it's first of all, it's very weird for the 82-year-old woman. She's a resident of the psychiatric ward, right? Picks her up.
Mhm.
She's waiting for a ride, picks her up in his van, takes her back to his house, rapes her, and then drops her off back at the psychiatric center. That's
Yeah,
so
it's wild.
strange.
It's wild. And unfortunately they couldn't piece this together way back when. I mean, I guess maybe her her memory wasn't too good about where she went or
Or
where she came from.
or maybe
They don't
she,
really.
maybe she couldn't tell them, in terms of
Right.
mental disability, you know.
Right. I mean, it looks as if like that the taxi stand or whatever it is was like his location to pick these women up, because that's where Anne was picked up from too.
It's so weird too, only because we've been doing a lot of talk about Cropsey because NYPD, as you know, because we've talked about it offline, we went up and reopened one of the cases of the 2 nurses who were killed. One disappeared, found, Shin Lee, and the other one, Ethel Atwell, never found. And so that is also at a mental institution that's 87. This is at Willowbrook. So it was just kind of weird that we're having these, because there's always interesting crimes that happen around these mental institutions. They've got a lot of employees, they've got a lot of nurses. Sometimes it's believed it's the patient. Sometimes, because also the residents can't actually advocate for themselves, so they fall victim to crimes. So it was just very interesting.
Yeah, and add the age factor into that, which is already
Yeah.
automatically goes against, even for identification purposes. It's a likely category for people who prey on older people for that reason, because they have a difficulty even identifying people. So it's an absolute. Think about this again, right? Once again, Suffolk County did a great job with the crime scene. We're talking 1997. They saved. They found 2 different types of fibers. They found the black fiber, which the district attorney said came from a vehicle, and they had a green fiber, which they said came from carpet fibers, which they believe came from inside the perp's house. On
Yeah.
both, yeah, and they had that on both victims. They didn't name the second victim because of the fact that it's covered under HIPAA, so she wasn't named. But all in all, I mean, putting this thing together, this was one of those things that I didn't see them coming out with this case. That's for sure.
Well, I mean, by the way, interesting because it's so near Calverton, right?
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, on the rec side, did we talk about this? Yeah, perp deceased. Did we talk about this? Remember when we talk about why Manorville? We talked a little bit about the Peconic River Sportsman's Club.
Mhm.
We talk about the fact that Rex's father worked at Grumman Air Force engineering
Offline, we did.
at that airport. That's another reason why he chose Manorville. It's right there. It's right next to Calverton.
Right. And actually, it's yeah. I know a lot of people were talking about possibility of Rex involved in some of these cases too. Off the charts with the age groups. I mean, that would have been something that I would have keyed up on. But here's the other thing. Somebody had asked, I think it was Cynthia asked in the chat, I think I saw before, they said, how do they close this case? This is a textbook, what we call exceptional clearance.
Oh, we just talked about this.
Yeah, we just did. Exceptional clearance is when law enforcement has probable cause to make an arrest, but there's something that's out of their control. In this case, the perp is dead. So yes, they technically arrest the person in order to close them out. In some jurisdictions, like we did in New York City, we had to prepare an online booking sheet, which is the arrest paperwork, and actually submit it through the system, and then make a notification down to corrections saying, hey, listen, you're going to see this online booking sheet, but there's no body to it because the perp's dead.
Yeah.
And, it is something just for accounting purposes. But yeah, a lot of jurisdictions handle it that way.
That's so weird. That's so crazy that we just talked about this.
Yeah, we
talked about
exceptional clearance.
For people who don't know, Joe was in The Guardian. Is it The Guardian? Talking about the Halloween murder of Ronald Sisman.
Yes.
Which is, I felt very, slighted because I had covered that case in The Sons of Sam.
I didn't even know.
Yeah, I know. It's a famous Halloween murder that I covered in The Sons of Sam. And then I was like, get a Google alert by like Ronald Crispin. I was like, they're like, we talked to this cold case expert. And I'm like,
Yeah, when he called me up, he said, "This was my case." But you looked at that, this like I didn't even
No,
know.
but because they were asking you how to clear it, and I had heard from another detective that it had been exceptionally cleared.
Exceptional clearance.
Exceptional clearance, different from Cuppy, right?
Yes. Yeah, CUPI stands for a case undetermined pending police investigation, where the
Right.
medical examiner can't come up with a certification of death and they kick it back to the detectives.
Right.
Something different. But the exceptional clearance column for police departments is a warning sign too. If you see a lot of exceptional clearances, they start to look into them, because you can hide a lot of stuff in there and clear a lot of cases that maybe shouldn't have been cleared in the first place. It's only supposed to be
Yeah.
used in very small times, short times. Yes.
Yes, it's a very like, are you sure?
And it's
Right.
already happened. I mean, there's been some police departments that have been caught by the DOJ, funneling a lot of the homicides as exceptional clearances. Right now the average clearance rate is about 54%. So anything higher than that is, I mean, really higher. I mean, you're looking in the 80s and 90s. That's something to worth looking into. Let's put it that way.
Okay, so what is going on in Suffolk County that they are clearing all these cold cases? This is amazing.
Well, it is absolutely amazing, and what they're doing is just like what we said. I've identified. They've taken 300 cases out of the shelves, off the boxes, and they're going through them for solvability factors, just as like what we used to do. But there's a task force, there's a team. So the district attorney's got a cold case team, the Suffolk County Police Department has a cold case team, and you still got the Gilgo task force, who is nice, seasoned investigators now in these things. So there are a lot of working parts here.
That's my point. My point is, and trust me, I love that it's happening, but there's also a political side to this whole thing, which is going on, or not even just political, just the opportunity of, look how good law enforcement Suffolk County is doing when they really put their minds to it. They're clearing cases. Absolutely. Look at Nassau, clearing cases. So here's the point, is like, this is how it should be done. This is how it can be done. And I just hope other places, we're going to talk about Atlantic City, Eastbound Strangler, like, this is what happens when you actually put those resources together and everybody's dedicated to solving those crimes.
Exactly. I mean, listen, Suffolk is actually showing you, if there's a will, there's a way.
Exactly.
And
that's my point.
And here's the key. And I wrote about this in that cold case handbook. I know you've got a copy, but I don't know if you've read it yet. That is holding up your air conditioner back there.
Yeah, exactly.
And I wrote about this specifically a number of times. In order to really conquer the cold case problem, which is becoming a huge problem in the United States.
Especially when there's 54% being solved.
Right. Well, that's what's happening. So you're looking at anywhere from 6 to 8 open homicides a year, depending on how many you have. That's 6,000. I mean, that's crazy numbers. But here's the deal: if the police executives, aren't buying into this, they're just it's gonna keep on piling up. And you look at now what's going on in Suffolk compared to the old administration, compared to when the new administration came in, a complete 180, and they are showing you the results of that. When you have the chief or the police commissioner, whoever goes, police departments call them something different. So when you have the chief of the department, you have the district attorney, and you have the whoever else is involved in this. You got Ed Toulon, is it Toulon Jr. out in the
Yep.
sheriff's department?
Yep.
Everybody's working on the same page, gathering intelligence and information and closing these cases.
And at the same
go
time,
figure.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the whole thing, right? It's like the go figure. It's like, and then Tierney looks good, right?
He ran unopposed this week. Yep, he ran unopposed for re-election.
He's looking good. He's solving these old cases. And again, we'll go back to what we looked at the killing season. The unsolved serial murders, if you looked at all of them, Atlantic City, they were always happening in cities where you had former cease and desist, former consent decree, meaning like, if the police are out there solving crimes, it does affect whether a serial killer is going to go for it or not. And so it's a good look. It's a good look.
This is where other agencies need to step up to the plate and take a look at this and use it as a model. I mean, it isn't very difficult, but you know what? It's expensive, right?
It's
We have all
expensive.
these,
That's the whole
you have
thing.
all of these people working on all these cases. But the flip side of this is that police departments are always talking about, well, we're trying to work on community police relationships. And I go, here it is. You want to work on community police relationships, show victims and their families that you haven't forgotten. That
Yeah,
is where you build your community trust again.
exactly. Or and we should talk about this. Go process all those unprocessed rape kits.
Yeah. Well,
You
and
want to
well,
find serial murders?
right, that could turn into another problem for you if you don't finish the deal, right? So now you go from having all these unsolved cases, untested cases, to now all these unsolved cases. So you're just trading one problem for another. So you still have to so you have to spend the money to test the kits, and then you have to spend the money to investigate them. Because when you take a look at what happens in this case, this guy Breaky, he committed a burglary a few years before this. He basically assaulted, he got a burglary first degree, which means he did it with a weapon. And they said he assaulted somebody inside the house. They didn't say if it was a sexual assault or not. But you're dealing with a guy here who was, he was a pretty young guy. He's in his 20s when he's doing this. He gets out after a few years. And then within a few months of being on parole, he kills Ann Lustig. I mean, and actually, he attacked the other woman first in December of '96, and then in Lustig in '97. So, I mean, this guy was a bad dude.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't have his DNA because this mixture didn't rise to the level of being able to get it into CODIS back in the day. They had his DNA in 2000. Can you believe this? This guy's DNA was in the system in 2000. And God only knows what else he did after this.
What was the problem with the mixture again?
Because they didn't allow the mixtures into the data because they couldn't separate it. CODIS, according to Tierney this afternoon, the mixture wouldn't be acceptable into CODIS. They wouldn't do it because it's only, I think he referred to it as the YSTR.
Oh, speaking of CODIS, bit rough.
Yeah, we'll get into that one too in a second. Yeah, we won't jump the gun, but remind me that we get into that because once again, CODIS and you know what? This was another win for the Suffolk County. This was another win because yeah, the wins keep on happening, and it isn't happening out of circumstance. This is happening because of hard work and dedication. And I've said this,
political will.
Yeah. And I've said this before. And actually, I like the fact that Ed Romaine, who was the executive there, he was there and he didn't take over like we've seen in previous county executives come in there and try to make it look like he did anything. Right? He went up there. He stood on the side. He let the district attorney talk. He let the police commissioner talk, and then he spoke. And he basically just, thanked everybody and about justice and everything like that. So I give him credit too, because he didn't go in there try to steal the limelight and tell everybody, "Look how great I am." Just ask me.
Well, it just that Suffolk County and Nassau County with what happened with the Hot Skates case. Waiting
Teresa
to find
Fusco,
some more, Teresa Fusco, waiting to find some more information about that. It wasn't a family member, but I think it was somebody close, reached out and they said, by the way, I think that the press had said that they were just saying that the girls, it made it seem like the girls were best friends and they really weren't that good of friends.
Right. But there's a relationship. They know each other, or
it's like neighborhood stuff. And they also said that guy's name had never come up before. So I just thought that was interesting.
And I think that there's going to be more on that case coming out soon. Those other cases, there's for sure. That is definitely bubbling up because they're working on all. Because Laura Engel did an interview with Patrick Ryder about this thing.
I saw that interview. Although, I'm sorry, but the way that they were talking so lovely about that former police detective who was, according to you, flaking that guy. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, the commissioner isn't going to come out and say that stuff. He's got
just be like no comment rather than like he was a great cop who framed these other two guys.
Yeah, that part was a little cringeworthy. Other than that, but you could tell he's on top of that. They're looking at that. I mean, listen, that case, there still need to be a lot of work done on those other cases. I mean, cadaver dogs and GPR. Just try to get into that. Look in that triangle. I mean, go back to where those houses weren't back then, right before the construction boom went in the 90s and the 2000s. What empty lots were there? All those different aspects, and then try to get in there and see if you can find something. I mean, she's got to be somewhere.
Absolutely, absolutely, she's got to be somewhere, and all by the water. I also got when I had mentioned the golf course, I got the golf course wrong. I don't think it was the Woodmere one specifically. Woodmere Country Club, I think it was. I don't know. I got it wrong.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's a lot of info, a lot of work in parts, a lot of different cases, a lot of things going on in that respect. What you're doing in trying to keep all these cases in the forefront and try to stay on top of them. Mistakes can be made.
Can I ask you a question? Who when you do have the Othram cases, who's paying for those? Is that police department paying for that?
Yeah, that's paying for them. And Othram actually has through their DNA Solves website that you can have the public.
I saw
And
that.
yeah, and what I'm thinking about doing, and maybe we should do this together on one of our on our joint things, is pick a case and see
You
if
do
we
like a
can.
telethon.
Yeah, why not? I mean, listen, Othram is doing this stuff like every day. There's something
I
big
know.
coming out, and they're really focused on Long Island. I mean, how many cases have they been solving on Long Island? Like we know they're working on Asian male dope.
16.
16.
They have solved 16, not in Long Island, sorry, New York. Solved 16 in New York. But
Right, a couple of them from Long Island,
but yeah,
including
I mean,
Tanya and Tanya Jackson, Tatiana.
we're 2, 4, maybe 5. I think 5. That's amazing.
Yeah, Sheila likes that idea, like almost like a telethon. I mean, but we should go through the cases and go through these things
Totally.
and try to see if we can get help and do it, because through public donations they're solving these cases, right? They can't.
Well, but how much does it cost? Like it was $7,500, right?
I think so.
Usually.
I've
So,
seen them as low as 2,000 on certain cases. I guess that depends on how much money they already have.
or how much work?
I guess so, or how degraded the system is. The DNA is. But we
Yeah,
should do some more research. I mean, we should plan something like that for 2026.
for
Kick off the
sure.
year with that.
For sure. That would be a great idea. I
Good
was just
public
saying,
service too.
for sure. From a law enforcement perspective, if you spend $7,500 to get a case win like that, isn't that worth it financially for that law enforcement department?
Considering how much money they waste on so many other damn things.
That's what I'm saying. Like it's such a cheap win for them.
Yes, and it's not coming from their pockets per se, right? Yes, it's coming from their budget and stuff like that. But
Sure, but
here's where police departments can justify budgets and saying this is how much money we're spending on these gold cases, right? I mean, think about that. You just don't have homicides. You have the missing persons and you have the sexual assaults. I mean, those are the trifecta of cold cases. And we generally, when people talk about cold cases, they only kind of lean towards the homicides. But you got two other huge categories there that far outsize the homicides. I mean, when you look at
totally.
the number of missing persons versus homicides and stuff like that, and boy,
Please.
those numbers are off the charts.
I
But
still say let's do rape kits, please, because if everybody talks about finding serial murders, and chances are you do rape kits, you're going to find serial murders, maybe before they actually kill 10 victims. Wouldn't that
yeah,
be
or
an
attack other people, right? Create the further victimization. But like I said, if they do it, you got to go through the whole process, because you're going to go from untested to unsolved, and that becomes another problem. So once you get it, then you actually have to do something about it. So that is going to be a long-term goal, and that's going to be a huge investment for a department to come there. But you know what? This is what we want our police departments to do. I don't
Absolutely.
think, and talk about bipartisan to get behind something. You could get the politicians. If you couldn't get two politicians from the different sides of the aisle to agree on using money to help solve these cases, I mean, come on.
Exactly.
You telling me that you couldn't find people on both sides of the aisle to say, yeah, this is a good idea? I would call you nonsense if you said no, that will never happen.
Especially in Long Island,
But it's a win-win for
and justice
everybody.
for the victims. Thank you, Britt.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and that's the bottom line, because they talked about justice at the presser today. This is justice, justice. I mean, Romaine said it justice like 3 or 4 times. And they use the word closure and all the other stuff that go along with it. That's great. you know what? You right now, if you are a family member living on Long Island that has been living with an old homicide or a sexual assault or a missing persons case, you should be very excited. Simple as that. Because
I would agree.
the will is there, and the district attorney was just reelected, ran unopposed, so he's going to be around for a few more years.
Yeah.
So this isn't going anywhere. Simple as that.
Which
Let's
brings us
see.
to
Yeah, let's get into the John Bitroff case. We're almost at the halfway point. You're just joining us now, 25 or 26 minutes into this. Josh Seaman, writer, director, and producer of The Killing Season. We just got done talking about the presser that the district attorney out in Suffolk County had today about the cold case arrest of Stephen Brakey. John Bitroff, we talked about this on a previous show. The 440 motion to bring out the DNA testing against Rex Sherman and to see if what happens. So what was your when we heard the news, what were you thinking at that point?
that it wasn't him.
It wasn't him, yeah.
Of course it's not him.
Well,
there are so many people who believe he's totally innocent, and I'm like, I don't know.
yeah. So I mean, listen, we don't. Well, I think it's over right now at this point.
It's done.
I don't think his motion goes anywhere, and I don't think we hear from John Bitroff ever again after this. But people say, well, there's still an untested, male DNA. Yeah, but they still can't get to a point where you can tell us when that was deposited. If it was Rex Sherman, it would open up the can of worms. But it isn't. So they need to move on.
Okay. However, only because I'm sitting here doing this whole thing, why does Rex, and maybe it's not his first victim, why is Sandra Castilla, November 20th, 1993, 1 week after Bitroff's first victim, still doesn't answer that question?
No, it doesn't. And also, yeah, I mean, she's right in the middle of the two other homicides.
2 weeks after the first, 8 weeks before. So you've got, I'll do it for the screen. We've got two victims here, and then she's Sandra's right in the middle.
Yeah. No, you don't. I mean, and also the Google searches, he was looking for Bitroff. I mean, it was almost as if,
we
he
don't
was
know
doing
the dates of those Google searches, do we?
No, we don't. We don't. And that was only a portion of the Google searches. They said those are the only ones that they can actually put out that are public. So I can only imagine what the other ones look like.
So here's my question, because now I'm going back to the Mindhunter. I'm in the Mindhunter of it all on the podcast that I'm writing, right? So I'm in the Mindhunter of it all, and we're talking about misleaders. We were on your show, and David Sarney's like, misleaders. What does misleaders mean, right? Tierney contends that he was reading Mindhunter not to find out about other serial murders, but to find out what the profilers were saying and thinking that to switch it off. Is there a chance? I'm just asking. He specifically chose November 20th, 2 weeks after Bitroff, in an effort to throw one of his victims, Sandra Castilla, in his mix.
Well, if he did, it worked for a long time, right? Because we had the district attorney's office at the time saying that Sandra Castilla was part of Bitroff that didn't have the evidence to do it. So, I mean, you had Spoda and Belenclava or whatever his name was, whatever they were looking at, and they were also looking at him for all the Gilgo murders too.
I understand that. I understand that.
So if he did it, that's like genius level stuff. I mean,
have we talked about
White
this?
Lotus?
I know we have, but we haven't talked about whether Rex was specifically doing it in an effort. I guess maybe we did, but then we were like, I don't know, but it could have done it. 2 weeks is perfect.
Yes, and like I said, it worked for a long time. They even thought that Bitroff was responsible for some of the Gilgo victims. So you can't say no, right? You can't. The Off the White Lotus, Lulu loves. Thank you very much for that super sticker. I really appreciate that. This whole Bitroff thing, though, brings out another factor into DNA ruling the day again. I mean, they have Suffolk. I can tell you, if you're a bad guy, stay the hell out of Suffolk because
please.
This technology has caught up big time.
But the amazing thing is I'm going through old quotes from Spoda, and Spoda, sorry, and Spoda goes, he's like, ladies and gentlemen, we have this DNA from Bitroff. It's unbelievable because there could be no other. And now we have a third victim, Sandra Castilla, who was killed in very, very similar fashion to the other two women. They were all positioned in the same manner. They were all naked. They were all found in the woods. Well, by the way, naked, not to be graphic, but naked and found in the woods is not some big connection. You know what I'm saying?
And we also know that some of that stuff really wasn't true. What we heard about the Sandra Castilla case, that her crime scene was much different than the others.
But that's my point. Like, you could still have DNA, but unless it's handled in the proper way, that idea could still be manipulated. He says there's one article of clothing missing from all three women, and it is the exact same article of clothing. What's that article of clothing?
The shoes.
Shoes. Right. But what's the problem? How, is that a real thing or not?
Yeah, exactly. Because if you're dragging somebody, you're usually dragging them from underneath the shoulders, and their shoes come off.
Yeah. So it's just the manipulation by the DA on top of everything that's going on. It was just incredible. And he's like quoting DNA on top of it. It's just fascinating.
Yeah. The nice thing I like about going back to the Spoda stuff is because when you listen to the stuff that they said, and now you know what we have, you kind of say to yourself, what the hell were you guys talking about? What the hell were you talking about?
No, now you're just like, not even what you were talking about. Like, what were you trying to pull?
Yeah.
Like, what were you trying to pull? Like, you were pulling some stuff.
And for those that aren't aware of what we're really talking about,
we'll bring up
right. But for those of you that aren't aware, you can go, there's YouTube, you can just type in Tom Spoda. He was the district attorney at the time, and type in, John Bitroff, and you'll see the press conferences, or you'll see the fight between him and Richard Dormer about how many serial killers there were and all the other stuff that goes along with it. And you watch them knowing what we know now, and the only thing you can think of is, like, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. Like, what are we doing here?
Well, it's some shenanigans is what we're doing here. All right. Everybody's going to revolt if we don't start discussing about Atlantic City.
Eastbound Strangler. Yes. Actually, right. Josh, November 20th, 2006. Yep. So we're almost at the anniversary part. Believe it or not, we look like we were planning it that way, but folks, we didn't. We didn't plan it that way, but this is the anniversary date, 19-year anniversary date, coming up with 4 victims: Kim Raffo, Barbara Bryder, Molly Jean Diltz, and Tracy Ann Roberts.
That's right.
The ages on them were varying greatly. They were found in a drainage ditch behind the Golden Key Motel on Horse Block Road, or
Pike.
That's the Suffolk County. Horse Pike. Yeah, Horse Block is Suffolk County.
Yeah,
Horse Pike.
Black Horse Pike. An ominous name. Sure, by the way.
It's in Atlantic City, or is it it's right at the border, right? Atlantic City and Egg Harbor.
Yeah, it's literally right on the border. So basically you have Atlantic City, where like a strip, where you would see all the casinos and everything like that. And then you have a bunch of hotels that are just outside of town. That's why I call the episode like Darkness on the Edge of Town. And it's just outside. And the Golden Key Motel and a bunch of motels that are kind of on this strip right outside is basically where all the sex workers are going and bringing Johns, etc., where they're living. So it was the seedy part of town where all the kind of the transactions went, but not car transactions, room transactions.
Right. Now, you covered the Atlantic City cases in the killing season.
Yes.
And this originally, did you think that they were connected in certain ways? Like between that and Gilgo?
Yeah. So I'll explain. We were looking at numerous crimes of unsolved sex workers. That was kind of the idea. And Gilgo was the point, like to say, like, oh my God, there's not just Gilgo, there's all these others. At the same time, a lot of web sleuthers at the time were saying, look at Atlantic City, it's so close. Remember, you basically had this was 7 months right before Maureen Brainerd Barnes disappeared. So there was enough reason to look at it as being connected to Gilgo. Some of the other ones, we weren't trying to say it was all one super serial killer, but there was a lot of connections with Atlantic City and very hard to parse out. Like, it was strange. If we went through and like 4 victims, all sex workers, okay, Caucasian, found near water, like, it's, you start to look at it from at least a big picture standpoint, and you're like, okay, there could be something here for sure.
Right, and the fact that the guy in Atlantic City doesn't really. I mean, people say like he's trying to hide him. You're not hiding anybody in a ditch, right? I mean, someone's going to find him, and they did. But what a lot of people don't understand is that by putting them in the water drainage part, the chances of washing away any forensic evidence was big. So to me, that gives you a lot of insight into who is responsible for their deaths, because this guy knew that by doing that, he was going to protect himself, which means he's still active out there doing this stuff.
I mean, we're going to assume he's not in Atlantic City because we haven't
Right.
found that. But yeah, they were also laid out, in a kind of like length similar fashion. But when you go into it and you start to look at other things, it is interesting. If you talk to some experts, behavioral science, BAU folks, they're like, why 4? 4 is always an interesting number. You had the Gilgo 4, you had the Eastbound Strangler 4, you had the 4 in Daytona. 4 is the number at which point a serial killer kind of can handle 4. If it gets more than that, it gets unwieldy for him or her. Meaning, like you can deal with 4 bodies, you can transport 4 bodies in some respect, but when it gets to be too much, when it gets to be too 5, so that's why we see a lot of 4s. Also, that's like a real hot period versus a cooling off period. So it's very interesting. Idaho 4. So it's just very interesting that's a common number that comes up. Now, let's talk about, a lot of people talk about the feet facing east. It's tidal, much like the tides in where Shannon Gilbert was found. It's tidal. Even though it's a drainage ditch, water is still coming in and water is still flowing out. So we can't really say that somehow the fact that they're all facing one side or another had anything very specific to do with how that they were placed. They could float around the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, that they were all facing east and all the other, and then they were making religious connotations to it, like, they're facing. Yeah, look, I go with what you put forth here about water can move the body around, like, it just. It either goes this way or it goes this way. You know what? If they would have went 24 hours later, they could have found everybody's heads going the other way.
Yeah, so it makes for a good press story, especially like they were all facing Atlantic City, and also I think we learned too. Let's talk about the shoes and socks. The reason I brought up the shoes and socks with Bitroff claiming that all those 3 victims were together is because I wanted to reference this case where they were all missing their shoes and socks. Right. We don't know why, but again, shoes come off easy. Maybe they don't have socks on. Do streetwalkers usually have socks? I don't know. I'm not going to presuppose, but they could have been. So anyway, that's why I brought up the shoes and socks, because there's a lot of things that can happen, especially when we talk about shoes. But the shoes were such a big thing in this case. People are like, oh, he's a foot fetish. Maybe, but maybe not.
Right. And listen, you always have to go with sometimes the obvious on certain things too, and say, and I'm sure that the police were saying he dragged his victims, right? I mean, that's why there's no shoes. And
how else are you going to get, so just another piece, and I'm sorry, they were all theoretically came out the back door of the motel.
Allegedly, right.
Allegedly, right? So there's a door, and then they're kind of like spread all around that door, like 500 feet down, 100 feet down. So they come out the door, and then they're kind of like dragged out.
Right. Well, the other thing too is if you're carrying a body out there, you got to be big enough and strong enough to be able to carry somebody that distance, which was kind of to carry somebody, even if they're 100 pounds, to carry them up like that without dragging them for that kind of distance and going through the brush and all the other things like that, you'd have to be pretty strong to do so.
So a couple other things that we talked about here. A lot of people bring up Kim Raffo. Yes, Kim Raffo was staying in Jericho. I don't know if it's Hapog. Could have been Hapog. The connections to Hapog are crazy in that, I mean, we interviewed Kim when we interviewed Kim for the Killing season. We interviewed Kim in Hapog. Amber had been to parties at Hapog. This is the Hapog Holiday Inn. So the Hapog, one of the reasons, like everybody brings up, it's just a hot spot for sex workers, you know?
Right.
But Kim Raffo had been staying, I think it was Jericho. Hugh Auslander told us it was Jericho, but she had been staying, you know, she went to kind of detox in Long Island. And then, you know, when she couldn't see her kids.
Yeah. And the other thing that, like, the age is so
tragic, by the way, this whole thing's tragic.
Kim Raffo is 35. Barbara Breitner is 42. Molly Joan Diltz is 20.
Diltz.
And Tracy Ann Roberts is 23.
Yeah.
Now, the only one that they actually had a cause of death, she was strangled, was Tracy. They said the other girls were basically too decomposed.
Yeah.
So they couldn't exactly come up with a cause of death. The manner of death was easy, as homicide, but the cause of death not so easy when you have a decomposed body, unless you find, of course, a bullet or something like that.
Yeah. So the other part of this was that when we spoke to Atlantic County Prosecutor's Office, they were very standoffish,
and they still are.
Yes, much like early Suffolk County. And that was upsetting. You know, like, we knew that what hadn't happened in Atlantic County, but they were still just as standoffish. Now, I attributed that to Atlantic City. Atlantic City makes a lot of money based upon their tourism. And the last thing anybody wants to talk about is 4 dead sex workers right outside of Atlantic City. So they're going to sweep it under the rug. Now, that may or may not be true, but, and yeah, you're right. It has been 19 years, but, you know, that's why I also wanted to talk about what Tierney is doing and what Nassau County is doing, and saying, if there is political will, they could do better, but there is not.
Right. And here, the district attorney here is still not talking about any of this stuff. He did make in 2023, right after they arrested Rex. So the DA's name was William Reynolds. He said that the actual quote I wrote down here, there does not seem to be a connection to, Rex Sherman to that. What does that mean?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, thanks.
And the then police commissioner, Rodney Harrison, he said that he doesn't believe that there's a connection between Rex and Atlantic City.
Right.
But he's only as good as what they tell him, too. So,
and obviously, I was one of the first ones. When Rex was arrested, I started getting all these calls from people thinking that case was going to heat up. That it was gonna do something. First, Rex was gonna fall, the dominoes were gonna fall, and then, okay, now we're gonna start talking about Atlantic City, but nothing has happened in Atlantic City. And you read the boards, and it's sad, because at least in the Gilgo case, people were bringing it up, and maybe it has to do with how many victims, tragically, we're talking about. But nothing is happening in Atlantic County. It's upsetting.
And like I said, we just talked about how well things could go if you just put that effort into it. Like I said, get everybody on board and take a look at it. Why hasn't Atlantic City put together a task force in this case?
Exactly. So let's hold their feet to the fire.
Well, why not, right? I mean, the issue that comes down to is you can see what happens when everybody working together. So you get Egg Harbor Township, whoever's in charge there. You get Atlantic City. You get the police department. You get the detectives. You get your best detectives from each department. You get the New Jersey State Police. I mean,
the problem is Atlantic City. I bet you. DNA too. Maybe there's just not enough DNA. Thank you, Sinead. Maybe there's just not enough DNA for them to go on. Maybe it's completely none.
Okay, but how about even just going back and re-interviewing people, trying to find some of the people that they spoke to years
In
ago?
19 years.
It's been 19 years, and the fact that Rex was even now entered into the conversation. You're telling me, did they go back and now talk to all these girls and show them the picture and say, "Hey, does this guy look familiar to you?" Did they
As in
do any
Rex?
of that?
As in
Yeah,
Rex?
yeah. Did they even show this picture around?
Are you saying it could be Rex?
No, I'm not. I'm just saying, did
Right.
they even make that effort?
Right.
Or did they just say, well, the DNA, we don't have any DNA? So, I mean, what did they go by to say that these aren't connected? There was no DNA at the time from the Atlantic City cases that we know of. I mean, maybe there is, right? Who knows? But the issue that comes down to is, other than that, you had 4 homicides and you have no physical evidence. How do you make a decision that these cases aren't connected? I mean, yes, they know a hell of a lot more than we do. That's for
Sure.
sure. I'm
So
just ranting because you look at this and say to yourself, "Come on, guys."
I know. I mean, so look, we know at the time, interestingly enough, what is interesting, by the way, is that the murders happened 7 months before Maureen Brainerd Barnes. And where was, when Maureen Brainerd Barnes happened tragically, where was Rex's wife and kids?
Atlantic City. Yeah, no. Well, once again, right? Did they go by that? Maybe did they have that he didn't have his travel arrangements going on? But like I said, to
He,
me, if you're going to eliminate him as a suspect, say, listen, he wasn't in town in Atlantic City. He didn't have the means, the motive, or the opportunity to, give me something other than to say that he doesn't seem to fit is not like, concrete. I mean, are they trying to hide something that they don't want to do? It doesn't matter. The guy's in jail. He ain't going anywhere. It's not like you're
right.
trying to spook somebody.
And you still haven't figured out after 19 years. So give me something more, right? So you've got that. Let's talk about Valerie Mack. Valerie Mack comes from Port Republic. Is literally right there. Right there. She's from there. Now, originally we didn't know where Valerie Mack had been picked up from. So there was a lot of sub whispers. Maybe Rex was picked her up from Atlantic City. Now, theoretically, some people have said that's not the case. She was picked up from New York, although we haven't gotten information about that.
Right. Confirmed
But
it.
confirmed. But there are a lot of connections to Atlantic City, So more than I would like for me to feel comfortable, knowing what little information Atlantic County Prosecutor's Office has given. And now we're going back to a Cini issue, which is like, okay, fine, tell me it's not connected, but give me information. Just say it's not connected and then don't do anything for 19 years. And then everybody's head starts to question what's going on.
Right. Or you couldn't release some evidence that you have, in the case like we saw Suffolk County do at the time, which was a little, bizarre at the time because we didn't understand the consequences of, but the belt, right? Putting out the belt. I mean, we don't find out till years later that there could be a connection with the belt based on the initials, but give the community something to show everybody, hey, listen, these girls mattered. These victims mattered.
That's what I said to Cini in 2015. I was like, give something to these, just show something. And he's like, I'd like to think that we had something to do with the belt. Probably not, but we were advocating for that back then, which is like, if you're not going to release the 911 call, and the reason you say you can't release a 911 call is for legal reasons, because technically you don't want to, because you may not want to close the case, then release something else. The belt was a good option.
It was, and like I said, there could be other items, but Atlantic City kind of has. I bet you they had the same kind of stuff that they could release something. Throw out a photograph of something that you recovered in and around the area of the scene. I mean, listen, they made a great effort to destroy all these places, all these no-tell motels.
So we were there literally, when you saw they were destroying the Golden Key. So there's unfortunately not a lot of evidence that you're still going to get out of the Golden Key. But
and you scattered any of the working girls that were there too. Now, good luck trying to find some of them if they're still around. And that's the other thing too. So, when they did do the interviews, did they secure the right names? Did they document all this stuff? Is there a way that maybe we can find where these girls are and just talk to them again? Because we have seen what happens when you get a fresh set of eyes, you get a group of detectives who know what they're doing, who are into doing this. They want to do this.
There's no political will to solve those murders in Atlantic City.
I'll agree with that, and it's
Um,
unfortunate.
Yep.
You know,
Did I tell you Khalil White was arrested at the Golden Key Motel outside the
yes,
Golden
you
Key
did.
Motel?
He's on my list of things to make sure you ask. And could you tell everybody who Khalil is, so
So,
who might not be familiar?
So Khalil White was Jessica Taylor, again, tragically, her pimp. Again, we interviewed for the Killing Season. He talks about his relationship with Jessica. Jessica was theoretically, we don't quite know, but she was trying to get away from him at some point. But it's very interesting that another connection to Atlantic City is Khalil, Jessica Taylor's pimp, was arrested outside the Golden Key Motel, right where these bodies were all found. Earlier, right around the time that she disappeared. Now, the idea there may be that this is all part of the circuit. And
Right.
You want to tell us what the circuit is?
Yeah, these guys run the same kinds of, girls with different things. You got Atlantic City, you got the casinos, you got the people coming in from all
Yep.
kinds of conventions at the time and doing all the other stuff, just like you see with the Super Bowl, right? So, and they run girls all across the place. And then we used to refer to it as a refresh. They move the girls to another location and then
Right.
bring in a new set of girls. We
Right.
just called it a refresh, and that was basically what they do. And that's how the circuit thing goes. They keep on going around in this circle.
And so we're talking Atlantic City, Long Island. I mean, it's, every area's had their circuit, and then there's the big circuit. Like if you're, I guess I'm high class. I don't know. I don't really know what I'm talking about. But there's the big circuit, and then there's the small regional circuit, right? Being, and if you go down into Jessica's, what was going on, Khalil was taking girls to Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Atlantic City, I think someplace Florida, and then up to Long Island or something like that. So, a kind of circle, the circuit. So, so Khalil was arrested. And I think that's actually where they might have even picked him up when they went to go talk about Jessica being in New York. They picked him up and had conversations with him in jail. So it's not that we're talking about two totally separate areas. We're talking about two areas that are also on the circuit, which I think is
and some of the same people involved and some of the
same
names
people
and
involved.
stuff like
Right.
And does that correlate to something else? No, of course not. But there's a connection. I mean, there's people to talk to. There's somebody to talk to. Emma.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Emma, thank you very much for that. Super says, love watching the both of you. Thank you for all your hard work and keeping us informed. Yes, Emma. Yeah. So Josh and I have been doing these now quite often. We go switch back and forth to each other's channel. Yes. Josh has his channel on Sinister, which is getting shared too on this.
Thank you.
Yeah, the Nightbot's been fighting everybody I saw earlier on. So Nightbot was acting up. I guess there was censoring people what they were writing. So I guess YouTube has been acting crazy. And just for a side note, not involved in anything. I got shut out of being able to do lives for about 2.5 weeks or 3 weeks.
Why?
I was having big problems with my StreamYard. It wasn't connecting to my YouTube. I had to go through all the YouTube help and all the other craziness that was going on. So that's why I've been kind of off the market from doing lives.
But here's the problem. What happens when all I talk about is QAnon, pedophiles, all this, all that sort of stuff? That's my areas of interest, and then it just gets.
Yeah, you got to be careful with using certain words and certain things, and that's why you have to, like I said, I like to use the word, the SA or the sexual assault and those kind of things, because those other keywords, you say them too many times, and YouTube shuts you down. And I think it was evident tonight in the comment section, because I saw a couple people saying that Becky says, yes, Nightbot has been keeping me busy. Where is that one? Yeah, Nightbot has been keeping me busy. So yeah, it's been these topics, unfortunately, the words that you use and stuff are difficult. So Josh, tell us about what's going on with Sinister right now.
Well, right now, this week, I'm trying to Like as in when I'm done here, I'm going to go record VO to for this podcast that we're doing. That's 6 parts. We're going back into the killing season to look at how close we came to solving the case, and then doing a real kind of investigative look, not just having conversations with people, but some of the work like we do. It's like investigative work, going back in, looking how close. Obviously, that's going to involve a lot of Dave Schaller's conversations, talking about the Green Avalanche, which Dave Schaller talked to us about quite a bit. Duck hunting, hunters. There's so much to talk about. Like, this is the 6 parts due, and I feel like I haven't even scratched the surface.
Yeah, well, like I said, even now with this conversation, because I still think that this Atlantic City case, like I said, under the right political leadership, can get a back up on its feet. This investigation, and once again, you were there while this was going on. Um, I'm sure you got lots of B-roll that you didn't ever made it. That never made it to the actual
We did so
documentary.
much. We went and talked to guys in mosques because of all the bodies facing east. Like, we just did a crazy amount of stuff. We spoke to like some real, like, and by the way, let me tell you, I will always remember it, going out on the streets of Atlantic City at 3:00 in the morning and speaking to people, and you feel so bad for the girls and finding themselves in this situation. And a lot of it had to do with the opioid epidemic that was happening at the time. So it's just sad, really sad.
Yeah, I went to Atlantic City a bunch of times, and it was always like people always tell you don't go on the boardwalk at a certain time, don't go here, don't go there, and the place never became what they said it was going to be. And this is what you're dealing with. It's still, yeah, I was there. Actually, I went to visit where the Golden Key was. I did a short video. I did all this
You do?
stuff. Yeah, this was going back a few years ago, and it's the Atlantic City was desolate. I mean,
Oof,
so many places were closed.
tough place. Oh,
And
by the
then,
way, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, so Jenny, great episode. Glad you guys are back in action. Loves this channel, quizzes, and the community. Yeah, the quizzes, folks. There are over 150 of them now.
Jeez. Oh, you guys can watch the killing season on Amazon. Please do. I would appreciate it.
So there you go. You heard it.
Yep. November 20th, Joe. November 20th. Does that date also sound familiar to you?
Besides the Atlantic City thing, no. What happened on the 20th? Refresh my memory.
November 20th, 1993. Sandro Castilla.
Oh. Yeah, we have to do. We have to start creating a chart with everybody's name and they, because once we start mixing these cases together, and looking for parallels, looking for connections.
Well, you could go crazy doing that, or the reality is that there's a lot of bad dudes out there killing a lot of women, unsolved cases that need to be solved. That's the other way to look at it. Which is like,
It's
terrible.
all about further victimization. When the police departments fail to make the arrests for the homicides, these guys are free to victimize other people. It's as simple as that. We've seen this 100 times. We've seen this 1,000 times, and it was something that we took very serious in the Cold Case Squad. It's about stopping the victimization.
But how do you talk to a place like Atlantic County Prosecutor's Office? What do you do?
Well, I mean, listen, I've pissed off a lot of officials in my day. I have this unique ability to get under people's skin. I would go over his head, go to the state attorney general. State attorney general, that's his boss, and say, hey, what's going on here? I mean, listen, everybody has to answer to somebody. It's as simple as that. Everybody's got a boss. And if it's not them, you can go to your senator, your congressman. Right now, I'm putting together a blog post on NamUs. And people don't realize it, that there are only 16 states that mandate the use of it. That's it. So, I mean, if we want to know where the problem is, that's our problem. So you're looking at what? 16 out of 50. Do the math quick. What's the percentage on that? Was it like 30% of the country? I mean, I suck at math, so don't.
I
If
think
I'm
less.
wrong, I know.
That would be less.
I know some people will be like, "Oh, you're wrong. You didn't get the math right." Because there's always somebody that's going to say something.
I don't do math. I solve crimes.
Exactly. Teresa Clay, thank you for gifting that membership. I really appreciate that. But that's the way you go. I mean, somebody's got to answer somebody. So the name is 16 states, and Ohio is
That's
trying to be the
ridiculous. I didn't
17th.
know that.
And Ohio is trying to be the 17th. They just it's going through their
mandated, right?
mandated.
Listen, if we didn't have that mandated thing, we would never have known, or at least the Nassau County Medical Examiner's Office wouldn't have had to tell Todd Matthews about Peaches being connected to Jane Doe number 3, Tanya Denise Jackson.
Exactly.
Never would have known.
Right. And actually, I give Cuomo credit. The one thing that he did do, right? He
that was
mandated
Cuomo.
New York.
You're right.
Yeah,
You're right.
He mandated New York State to be one of those on there. So,
but I think that also came from Chris Murphy coming off Billy Szymanski's law. I think that was
right.
Chris Murphy, because we interviewed Chris Murphy back then too.
Right. Well, Chris Murphy, so he's got Billy's law. It's a federal law, but it falls short. It doesn't mandate the states to actually do this. Only in certain cases, children and those kind of things.
Right.
So,
well,
yes,
I mean, name is, how about murders?
Oh, God. Yeah. Murders? I mean, well, the only thing we got working for murders is the Murder Accountability Project. It's the only place you can go and get all the information on it.
Just for those who don't know, just to reiterate an astounding fact, it is not federally mandated that a police department has to put its unsolved murders, in a public database. They could decide to not put that information. And a lot of police departments don't, because they don't want their incompetence or the fact of just not solving these murders being out in the public, because then that information could be used against them.
And I don't know if people are aware, but 100% of reporting crime to the DOJ is also voluntary. There's nothing. A couple of years ago, when everybody was going to look, homicides are down. Yeah, only to find out that New York, LA, and Chicago didn't report their homicides.
All the numbers, the numbers are BS. The numbers don't mean anything. Every statistic is virtually BS.
Well, what I'm planning on doing with this name is I'm going to do a blog post. I'm going to do an audio podcast on the NamUs thing. And there's going to be a call to action on this. The people have to do stuff. You have to call your Congress people. Once you see this list, if you're not on, your state's not on this list, you got to do something. I mean, like I said, once again, bipartisan. How do you not get persons from either side of the aisle to say, hey, you know what? This is a bad idea. This is a terrible idea.
Or what you say is, listen, everybody's so into true crime. Great. If you're really that into true crime, do something good with that interest. And instead of watching this Netflix show, sign this petition, sign that.
Yeah. So I want to come up with a whole plan. Maybe it's also a, one of those online petition things, change.org, or, whatever it may be. I mean, listen, are we going to move mountains? No, but if we can get 2 or 3 more states to keep on doing this, that's basically where you want to go with this.
You could actually go to all the networks and be like, hey, once you have this, like, do something good with your true crime show, everybody get on the board with this. You probably could get somebody to do that.
Absolutely. All right, Josh, listen, this was phenomenal again, as usual. Everybody, Josh, you hang out 1 second. Everybody else, sure. Tomorrow night, I got Joe Scott Morgan, everyone's favorite death investigator, will be joining us.
Is he going to talk about decapitation in Staten Island?
Yes, I finally got him. Come on. Yeah. We got to talk to Joe about answering his phones. Everybody, you guys have a great night. Thanks for coming out. We had almost 300 people watching this live, so thank you very much.
All
everybody.
Right.